Now we're going to head on over to Barb Higgins sitting down with Mike McCourt.
Okay, you guys, thanks. Good morning, Ms. Higgins.
Good
Strange
morning.
but true, we haven't met before.
I know, so odd.
There you go. Well, it's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Let me start with this. Back on July 23rd, when you announced it, kind of came out of the blue. You kept it pretty much to yourself. And I was curious then, still am, as to whether you had spent several weeks or months sort of pacing up and down your kitchen, saying to yourself, I'd like to do this and I should do it and probably could do it, or whether conversely you were approached by some folks here in town who said, we think you could do this and we think you should and we'd like you to try.
It was the second scenario, is that the day that Mr. Bronconnier announced that he was not going to run, I got an email from someone who said you should consider this, and I was not considering it. And then through the course of the next couple of months, I had people, some of them people I hadn't heard from in years, emailing me and calling me. And you know, it wasn't something I was thinking of, but because it was people from all walks of life, if it had just been close friends telling me to do this, I would not have done it. But it was people from all walks of life and not-for-profit and business. And so I did start giving it some thought by stampede, honestly. I mean, you know, the month before, I had been asked and I was not considering it. It's not something I was dreaming about, but I did make the decision. I jumped in. I felt that finally I would regret it if I didn't do it.
That would leave you open to the suggestion, Ms. Higgins, perhaps in the raw political sense, that you are therefore, since you were in effect drafted, a candidate as a marionette dancing on somebody else's strings.
I have no idea where you would get that from. I made this decision.
I get it
based
from your admission that you were drafted by other folks, and that this was not something that you yourself had considered was something you ought to do or could do or should.
Right, and that's how life works, Mike, is that opportunities are presented in life in terms of openings, doors open, you decide whether you're going to walk through them. An election is about people asking you to step forward. People cast their ballot. That's what an election is. And so by people emailing me and calling me who have no political interest whatsoever, that is the electorate. And that's what we're doing on Monday. These were not people with political interests. These were people who were in the community that I had touched base with over many, many years. So, you know, it's an interesting comment you make, but I'll just tell you, there's no truth to it.
It wasn't a comment, it was a question.
Okay.
Which leads me to another. You have been accused by Mr. McIver, primarily, and by some of the other candidates, as being a contender with no experience. You have laid out 7 priorities, and you've got your policies in order and all of that sort of stuff. But I wonder about your political intuition and acumen, Ms. Higgins, in the context of a disastrous choice of campaign manager to begin with, and your ready acquiescence to his recommendations in at least 2 cases that you do something which you later said you ought to have. That doesn't speak well, it seems to me, of your political instincts, especially when running for mayor.
Well, I would respectfully disagree and say that when the group that asked me to step forward, we were sitting around talking about, there was no campaign manager in the room when the decision was made.
Yeah, but you picked some guy who was a screw-up. You had to admit that a couple of weeks into the campaign. The question again, political intuition, political acumen.
You know what? I think it's inappropriate to call anyone a political screw-up. And so, with all due respect again, I'm going to push back because this is a man who has plenty of political experience, is trying to run his company and trying to run a campaign at the same time. It was not about political screw-up. It was about time management, and this man is trying to run a company. He jumped on board because he believed in me, and I appreciate that. I have run my entire campaign with volunteers. I jumped in late, and I'm very proud of what my team has done. And I will not stand by and hear you call someone a political screw-up who is volunteering his time and taking his time away from his company. That is a Calgarian who cares about this city.
I can see I irked you with that question.
Yes, because it's inappropriate. This is a man who cares about the city.
But he didn't do a very good job for you, did he?
He did a fabulous job with the time that he had. I mean, you know, journalism is about asking questions without a bias. You're clearly coming from a bias, so I'm going to challenge that.
And with that, we're out of time.
Thank
but I
you.
appreciate you coming in. Thanks, Ms. Higgins.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, Barb, thank you so
We
much.
have somebody else showing
Yes,
up.
thank you for joining us
Thanks.
today. BT's Breakfast with the Candidates wraps up tomorrow. Rick McIver will be joining us. And coming up after the break, meteorologist Andrew Schultz will have our full weather forecast. Stay with us.